Aloha and welcome finally to Trust and Verify, the show where everything can go wrong, will go wrong. It is guaranteed. We have had nothing but tech problems tonight, so hopefully you guys are actually seeing us, hearing us. But before we can get any further, I got to introduce my friend, my partner, my co-host, Boogie. Boogie Bumper, how's it going, brother?
It's going good, James. It's good to be with you finally. Normally, it's a really big faux pas in radio broadcasting to mention any kind of behind-the-scenes problems that you're actually having. But I'm now at the stage where if the Tech Valley overlords are to enslave us, if they can just guarantee us some workable software upgrades, I might even sign up to it. Like, I might even volunteer. So putting that to one side, we've got plenty of stuff to get through. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Please share the show out if you can manage, if tech isn't going to crush you in the meantime like it did to us. It's a Kavanaugh Super Show, baby, like you haven't heard enough of that yet. Look forward to it.
We'll be right back with the Kavanaugh Super Show.
Friend and foe alike, join me, Varun Prasad, every week on the Common Discourse Weekly Roundup podcast. You can follow the show on @TCDTweet on Twitter and Periscope. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, Stream Me, iTunes, or your preferred podcast platform. If you like what you hear, or you would like to express your raging discontent, please consider leaving us a review. The Common Discourse, independent political opinion, thought, and analysis for the people, by the people.
Aloha and welcome back. As usual, the tech issues will plague us throughout the rest of this episode, but we need to get to our first story. So, Boogie, what you got for us?
Well, I'm in a real shitty mood now, so it should be fun. Should be a fun show coming up. I've heard just about enough of this Kavanaugh shit, as I'm sure everyone else has, but we're going to dedicate a whole show to it because that's the kind of sadists that we are here at Trust and Verify. Kavanaugh accuser commits to Senate hearing Thursday as battle lines harden for a high-stakes confrontation. With a high-stakes Senate hearing set for Thursday morning, battle lines hardened Sunday between defenders of the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and those of Christine Blasey Ford, the California professor who says the federal judge sexually assaulted her when they were, teenagers, James. My first issue with this is high-stakes confrontation. How high stakes will it be? See, this has been a long and lengthy build-up period. On again, off again. After a lengthy phone call with committee staffers, Ford's attorney said Sunday that she would testify to the Senate Judiciary Committee ahead of Kavanaugh, not after. So I've got to go first. And he's got to come after me. She seems to be making a lot of demands of the US government, I've noticed, this woman, funnily enough, but we can get to that later, to present their opposing memories of a drunken party more than 3 decades ago where she says she was nearly raped. We've made important progress, Ford's attorney Deborah S. Katz, Lisa J. Banks, and Michael J. Bromwich said in a statement. Dr. Ford believes it's important for senators to hear directly from her about the sexual assault committed against her. She has agreed to move forward. The interesting part to this is, for me, James, since when do people making accusations of a particular person get to not do what is traditionally done when accusing somebody of sexual assault? Because generally, if you're accusing somebody of sexual assault, you would go to the police first. You wouldn't go to the bloody Senate of the US government. For some reason, this chick gets to go straight to Capitol Hill, like Miss Ford goes to Washington. Depending on how the confrontation plays out, we've already discovered that it's not a confrontation. She's going to testify before him and only before. The Senate showdown could provide the capstone to a painful political drama that has riveted Washington, James. There's a red flag, and has threatened to derail Kavanaugh's expected confirmation to the nation's highest court. Story number 2, Politico, James. That known right-wing conspiracy theory website known as Politico. You know that right-wing smear machine, James, that likes to harass and bully people who are accusing judges of sexual assault? Politico. Woman denies attending party where alleged Kavanaugh assault occurred. A woman whom Christine Blasey Ford said was at the party where Ford claimed she was sexually assaulted by Brett Kavanaugh is denying that she knows the Supreme Court nominee. Uh-oh. In an email to the Senate Judiciary Committee sent Saturday evening and obtained by Politico, Leyland Kazar said she does not know Kavanaugh or remember being at the party with him. I don't even know the guy. I didn't know. I wasn't at a party with him. I don't even know the guy. The committee believed Kazar was one of the unnamed people referred to in a Washington Post story whom Ford remembered attending the high school party. Ford told the Post that she remembered Kazar being at the party. Well, I guess we've got to believe her. If you are making accusations about being sexually assaulted, James, the onus is on the rest of society to believe you. And if you are being named as one of the people in the vicinity of the alleged sexual assault and you viciously, like a bigot, like a denier, claim that you weren't even at the party at the time, well, you've got to believe it. Maybe I was at the party. Maybe I do know Judge Kavanaugh after all. I mean, isn't it wrong for her to claim that she doesn't remember this stuff?
Yeah,
tell you what.
Yeah. I think it's good.
Please.
I think it's hilarious that throughout all of this, people they're trying so hard. Do you have the Washington Post story maybe later or not? Let me know before I go down that road. But
I do. I've got a couple of Washington Post stories later on. I don't know if it's the one, but you know what? It's in the Washington Post. It'll be one. It'll be good.
Okay, because one of the Washington Post stories, it's actually that come out that they had the emails and knew all of this stuff before they posted the false story that said there was 4 boys. Like they already knew it was supposed to be 3 boys and a girl. Yet between the New York Times and the Washington Post, they already screwed that narrative up. They already got who was there wrong, but they knew it before print because they have the emails being released. We all know this is a setup. And I think that is what's likely to come out and why you see Chuck Grassley and the rest of the guys playing ball. This goes back to learning from Donald Trump. This is vampire treatment. Shine the light, now sing for your supper. That's what they're doing to these guys. They're allowing them to expose how fake, fraudulent, and what lengths they're willing to go to break the law to try to stop the right from everything that's legal and constitutional. And you bring up a very, very, very good point, which is that this is the kind of stuff that's handled in states and by local municipalities. This is not federal stuff. This is not even FBI investigative worthy, just based on a claim that's 35 years old, because I'm pretty sure even if it actually happened, it's already outside the statute of limitations on crimes like this. This is not capital murder where there is no statute of limitations. This is the kind of crap that the left is willing to go to. And I see what the real play is coming from the right, and that's exposure. They're exposing them. I would highlight somewhere.
They look really weak, though, I think, to a lot of people. It looks like, I mean, you've even got like Dan Bongino tweeting out, this is the most gutless pack of Republicans I've ever seen. Just have the bloody vote, just get it over with.
Right, but
look, you know me. I'm normally someone who's like, well, she might be telling the truth. We need to assess all incoming information. And I don't know if it's the tech issues leading into today's show or my general demeanor and cynicism with life as we know it at this point. But now I'm like, to hell with it. Like, I don't believe it. I don't believe anything that comes out of these people's mouths anymore. I mean, just take, for instance, there's new revelations today, James. Someone apparently was assaulted with a dildo or something. I mean, perish the thought. But of course, we have to push back. Oh, we need more time. She wants to tell her story, but we need more time for her to tell her story, right? All of the stories that go into that. So then they know that Monday morning there's going to be a push for people to say, well, you know what, let's just have the vote now. So what just happens to happen on Sunday night? Oh, we found someone else. There was a sex toy involved. Give me a break. Like, honestly, I'm done with it. It's crap. Yeah. It's all crap. How can you prove it anyway? How can you possibly prove it?
That's right.
So what? Unless someone's got a time machine and can go back to a party when the guy's 17, drinking a couple of warm Budweisers. Even the witness says he wasn't there. I don't even know him. I wasn't there. You lying bitch. Yes, you were. Oh, okay. Sorry. Me too. Hashtag me too. Like, who actually believes this stuff?
The left. The crazy vitriolic left. But your point is well made about how the conservatives and the Republicans all look weak in Congress, both the Senate and the House, actually. But because I think one of their strategies that they're trying to do, again, it's tied into the vampire treatment, is also to let the public scream for it. Make us the bad guy. In other words, make all of us that are screaming for Jesus just vote. And then they can say, hey, the people demand it. The people are demanding that we vote. It's not our fault. We're still the good guys. Now, I mean, yeah, that's weak and it's pandering. But I think there's a bigger strategy in play here. And at least I'm hopeful that there's a bigger strategy in play, because I'll tell you for sure that our side is going to be really, really upset if we do not get these people appointed. But having said that, I've heard some scuttlebutt from people, including you, that preferred Amy Barrett. Yeah, preferred Amy Barrett as a Supreme Court nominee. And here's what I'm going to say about that. It would be worse, maybe by 2, 3, 4 times worse, had they appointed Amy Barrett. And here's why I say that, is that this entire shenanigans show from the left is all about one subject. One, it's all about abortion. It's all about Roe v. Wade. And had they appointed Amy Barrett, this shit show would have gone ballistic over abortion, which if you go back to some James R. Periscopes, you'll remember what I've said, that this is the subject that allows them a battle prong. It allows them some fighting space, because there's plenty of independents who are not anti-abortion. That's what they want to make November all about. They want to make November all about their pet project issues, not about what's real. And the real truth is this is all about subversive people in our government. It's all about criminals in our government. And it's all about cleaning this cesspool of Washington, D.C. up and returning the power to the people. This is why it's such a big distraction right now. This is why they're fighting this battle. This is why Kavanaugh is the story. Meantime, the president of the United States at the rally, at his campaign rally on Friday in Missouri, said, the FBI, we got all the criminals out. He basically pronounced the FBI is clean. We're ready to move forward. And this should be the front page story. All the criminals are out of the FBI. Now we're fumigating the stench. He said the words. This is what the president of the United States said. And yet we're talking about Kavanaugh nonstop, 24 hours a day. To me, that's just proof in the pudding right there.
Well, to me, I think that rant is proof that you've lost the timer, because you're about 3 minutes over the ad break.
So apparently, to be continued. We're out of here. We'll see what happens later. Give me a second. Oh, my Lord.
This is a moment in history that will look back, that either the Republican Party became dominant for a generation or the Republican Party died. I'm telling you, it is that serious. And for those of you who are saying it must be perfect, it must be, I will look at you. If they don't get this done because it must be perfect, I will look at you in 2018 when we lose, and I will put my finger at you and I say, this is on you. You did this. We had a chance to MAGA. We had a chance to win America back. We had a chance to support our President Donald Trump, and you stood against him. You stood with the Democrats, and you made us lose, and you destroyed this country. And you can go to hell as far as I'm concerned.
Aloha, welcome back. Sorry about the overtime on segment number 1, but since we're talking about the same subject, shouldn't much matter. But what you got for us on tap next, Boogie?
Well, I'm going to push back against your previously well-articulated but poorly thought-out argument, James, and I'm going to use that known right-wing conspiracy website known as the Washington Post to back me up. So it's double kill. The least bad solution to the Kavanaugh dilemma. Philosophers take particular pleasure in posing questions with no ideal answer. Dilemmas, as they are known in logic. Yes, the Washington Post now bringing up logic. It's fantastic, isn't it? Often these are highly artificial. In his criticism of Immanuel Kant, for example, Benjamin Constant maintained that absolute honesty cannot be a rule and proved it with this dilemma. If you were hiding your best friend from a murderer and the madman came to your door, how would you answer when he demanded, "Is your friend here?" The thing I like about this opening paragraph is it sets the pace for the rest of the article, that being confusion. So straight away, there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong when it comes to these things. You may think you're right, but are you really right? Is it proper to tell the truth in certain situations? Do you see what's the kind of cognitive environment that's being created by the author here? The dilemma facing the Senate next week presents two bad options, James, but these are painfully real. On Monday, the Judiciary Committee is expected to hear competing testimony from Supreme Court nominee Brett M. Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford, who accuses Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her when they were teenagers in the 1980s. The other point about the whole teenager thing is it's been brought up by a couple of people, and pardon me, and that is I thought that if indeed you do commit some kind of wrongdoing when you're in your teenage years, isn't that supposed to be expunged when you turn 18? Isn't that supposed to be wiped?
Yep.
So now what are we going to start prosecuting people well into their 50s for something that they may or may not have done when they were teenagers, when if indeed he was found guilty as a teenager of touching a boob at a drunken party, he would now be nobody would now know about it? Isn't that the case?
Well,
isn't that interesting? Crimes you can only be accused of being guilty of after you've turned 18, but that happened before you're 18. And if you were actually guilty, nobody would know about it. I think it's incredible. He says it didn't happen. She says it did. You can be sure that Kavanaugh's opponents will spare no effort in their search for another accuser to tip this balance. There you go, Washington Post, preempting the story that came out today. But if things remain as they are, the hearing will probably end without proof one way or the other. The choice, the dilemma, will be whether to block the rise of a widely respected judge based on something he might or might not have done as a juvenile, or to promote the highest court a man accused of trying to rape an underage girl. They don't mention that he was also quote-unquote underage at the time. Either choice presents the acute possibility that a grave injustice will be done. So either way, it's going to be wrong, James. I don't say this because boys will be boys, a blithe slander on the character of boys generally. I say it because adolescent boys and girls often address their awkwardness with alcohol, and sexual inexperience plus inebriation is a time-tested recipe for regrets and misunderstandings. But a decision to confirm Kavanaugh under these circumstances portends further damage to the already battered credibility of the Supreme Court. Now we're trying to save the Supreme Court over on the left. I happen to believe the nominee when he says Roe v. Wade is a, quote, important precedent he would be bound to respect. However, should he become the fifth deeply conservative vote on the court, see, that's the important part here. It's the ideology. We knew when Donald Trump was running that the Supreme Court was the big cheese. This was the prize. They knew it and we knew it. The left sure as shit knew it. And you know what? I don't even want to bring this up, but if I can just throw a little conspiracy theory hand grenade in there, it was talked about in conspiracy circles, the untimely sudden death of Judge Antonin Scalia back in the day when they were trying to push through the various climate change regulations and whatnot and seeing if it was constitutional to do so. Do you remember that? Do you remember the timing of all
absolutely.
of that? But let's keep that to the conspiracy theory side. How exactly are women supposed to feel about that, and how exactly did the conservative movement blunder into this demoralizing position? Instead, their idea of a justice seems to be getting narrower rather than more inclusive. If Kavanaugh scrapes by, every Republican justice named in the 21st century will have been a white male judge from a federal appeals court. Half from Harvard Law School, half from Yale, Yale. Appointing a woman should have been the natural for President Trump, whose sister was a longtime judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals. James, let's rock and roll back to our Supreme Court show on the Daily Boogie Thursday night, where you said Donald Trump should nominate his sister. Kudos to you, my friend. You and the Washington Post are on the same wavelength here. After all, conservative women, that's not something you want to get told very often, is it? After all, conservative women continue to be a part of his base constituency. Instead, he went with Kavanaugh, a highly pedigreed, highly experienced, highly vetted darling of the Federalist Society, just like the ones before. But in his case, a disputed skeleton has fallen from his closet. What the Washington Post here is actually arguing is that he should have put a woman up instead of Judge Kavanaugh. Now, here's where I differ with you on Amy Barrett, and I'll try to wrap it up pretty quickly. I would have put up Amy Barrett purely for a political win, because when you crunch the numbers, it works out better for the Republicans in the long term, and here's why. It's easier to prosecute a sexual assault accusation against a white male in today's age if you're trying to suppress the female vote for the Republicans. Now, Amy Barrett is a female, but she's also a devout Catholic. If you prosecute her on her stance of abortion, you risk alienating traditional Democrat voters, namely in the Black and Hispanic communities, in the very seats that they're trying to win in the upcoming races in Congress and in the Senate, James. So I think if you crunch the numbers, you're more likely to, if you put up Amy Barrett, force the Democrats to use as their only attack point, that being abortion, and risk alienating large chunks of the supporter base that they need to win votes in the particular seats around the South that they need them, as opposed to Judge Kavanaugh, when you're going to more than likely at least encourage low information female voters to get on the #MeToo bandwagon, and you're more likely to get a positive result in your favor when trying to suppress female votes for the Republicans. That's my answer. It's long-winded, but that's my answer. That's why I disagree.
Copy
do you
that.
want a political win? Because it's all about the midterms. We knew that the Supreme Court nominations would be the left need a focal. They love a single issue election. They thrive on single issue elections. Republicans tend to run on like a whole bevy of things. It'll be like, we need to lower taxes, we need to boost spending for the military, we need better trade deals, we need X, Y, Z, and T. The Democrats want to focus all of their energy and all of their activism into a single focal point. Like the difference between trying to punch concrete and then hitting a pin with a hammer. Like if you focus all of the energy in a smaller space, you're more likely to do damage. Like we know that. That's exactly. If they put up Amy Barrett instead, the risk for them, like alienating, like I said, Hispanic voters especially, and Black voters in the South who are deeply Christian, who aren't anti-abortion but vote Democrat for other reasons, perhaps namely economic reasons. You could force a low turnout on your own side, and really, what else can they attack Amy Barrett on? There's no other option. They would have had to cut off their nose to spite their face.
I hear you, and I'm just gonna. This is a great point that we disagree on. It gives our audience both sides of the information, and I would finalize what I'm saying in a small rebuttal is just to say that I think you highlight the issue extremely well. Is that, to me, this comes down to the Me Too movement, which we all know is busted, versus the abortion issue, which has high tension. That's really, it's Kavanaugh, the Me Too busted movement, or it's Amy Barrett with the abortion issue. I'm going to take Kavanaugh, and I think that's really, really cutting it down to the brass tacks. Folks, we're up against the break. I'm going to cut it a little bit early, try to save some time for the next segment. We'll be right back. Oh, yep. If I could push the right button, now I lost all the time I was saving.
What's all happening? What a stellar show.
Do you lie awake at night pondering life's big questions? Is there a God? What is the meaning of life? How would one do an hour-long sports show without ever actually talking about sport? If yes, we can help you answer 33% of these pressing questions. All you have to do is check out the starting block on tavshow.com, Periscope, stream me, or YouTube, Wednesday mornings at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also download the podcast on iTunes just by searching for The Starting Block in the store or at thestartingblock.podbean.com. Or if you're really desperate for answers, why not check us out on Twitter at The Starting Block. No K at the end, don't forget to drop that K. Enlightenment is now only a click away.
Now that is a freaking awesome commercial. Aloha and welcome back to the final segment of our show before we get to the hammering. Yes, that's right. The show format got changed on the fly by Boogie last week, so we are up to segment number 3, and we are, as you can see by our little what do you call that? Little bullet points there. It's Kavanaugh. Now we have a little bit more Kavanaugh. So what you got for us next, Boogie?
Well, I was surprised because we changed the rundown last week. I didn't know we changed it this week as well. So now I've just had to reverse everything, but that's okay. That falls right into the trend of what we've been dealing with here behind the scenes. You should really discuss these things with me pre-show. That's all right. I've got another one for you. Lucky I come prepared. Thomas Kavanaugh and race. There's one distinct difference between the Clarence Thomas hearings and the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. Can you tell the difference, James? Because let's not accuse the side of politics who are reducing and minimizing, the judicial system and, the general discourse in today's society, James, down to, say, shallow observations of one another. Like, let's not accuse them of that. But there's apparently one big difference between Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh. Maybe one of them likes golf more. I'm not sure. That could be it. Who knows? This week's hearings, in which Christine Blasey Ford, the California professor who has accused the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault when she was 15 and he was 17, will appear, seems primed to privilege Kavanaugh and exploit Ford's weaknesses. Oh, yes. And you know what we should do? We should tip the ledger the other way so the person making the accusation has a better chance of winning. Because that would be fair. That would be fair. We should reverse it. You should be guilty until proven. He should have to prove himself innocent now at this point. There is no effort yet to thoroughly investigate her claim by either the FBI or the Senate itself. Again, it did happen 36 years ago. The people who generally investigate these kinds of claims are the local police, James, funnily enough. Oh, the FBI and the Senate haven't stepped in to demand an investigation. Why don't we get all people who accuse people of sexual assault and get the Senate and the FBI to investigate that? You know what? Like this, the government might run more smoothly if all they're doing is investigating 36-year-old sexual assault claims. Like if they could just leave the rest of the business of governing alone for a few years while they deal with the sexual assaults, maybe America would be better off. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would say real quick, so let me interrupt you just real quick. I would say that you bring up a really good point that ties back to what I said earlier. These guys thought that they are now trying to discredit the FBI. The FBI that the president just certified as clean. And I would argue the FBI that is about to come down on these people like a ton of bricks. Because when all of these investigations get exposed, who were the investigators? Who were the investigators helping John Hubert? Who are the investigators that work for Jeff Sessions? Who do you think is about to expose the corruption in D.C.? It all comes down to the FBI is clean.
Well, and it also comes down to the fact if you launch some kind of investigation into a 36-year-old alleged crime where two drunken teenagers were fiddling with each other after having one too many warm Budweisers, the more than likely result is they're not going to know any different whether it happened or not. And what you do is then, stretch out the proceedings for a number of months until after the midterms, which is what I suspect the Democrats are trying to do all along. Like, I don't know if they're afraid of military tribunals. I don't know if there's some plan working in action, but I do know hack politicking when I see it. And this smacks of hack shitty politicking strategy. Like Absolutely. Lowest common denominator stuff. That's my opinion anyway. Indeed, many people have drawn attention to the numerous parallels between the two cases, but I would like to draw attention to one difference, one that could bode well for Ford. Are you ready for it, James? The
Yep.
absence of a racial element in a heated racial environment. Yep. It's different. It's different because Clarence Thomas is black, James. Yeah, it's not like the New York Times to give us shallow observations, is it? Racially charged, perhaps? Months before Thomas was nominated, an amateur photographer videotaped the savage beating of a motorist, Rodney King, by a throng of Los Angeles police officers. Yes, it's all got to do with the LA riots. It's all got to do with the Rodney King case. One could argue that this was the first modern Black Lives Matter case, a private citizen recording and sharing video that exposed police brutality. In June of 1991, the officers awaited trial. Yes, we all know the story about this. Thomas's nomination put Black America in a bind, James. Are you ready for this? This was the bind that Black America had back in 1991. Oppose Thomas and risk having no black representation on the court, or support him in spite of his hostile views, James. You know what those hostile views are? Conservative views. Yes, there you go. You can't be a conservative. You can't be a conservative and get elected to the court. Isn't it wonderful? The more things change, the more they stay the same. You know, people say, oh, we've made a lot of progress. I beg to differ. No, the left was still bashing and attacking black Republicans all the way back in 1990, and they've only gotten worse. So there's been very little progress made on that front, believe it or not. Then came the allegation of sexual harassment brought by Professor Hill, and everything changed. It is not that Hill wasn't credible, but it was that Thomas was on the defensive, and the image of yet another black man under attack from a group of white men had an eerie echo of King under assault from the LAPD. There you go. So if only Brett Kavanaugh was black, none of this would be an issue. Everyone would understand. Surely. Incredible stuff. It's just shameful.
It is shameful.
Because that video has been making the rounds, right? Of that powerful statement from Clarence Thomas when he was under those attacks. That's been making the rounds, and obviously it's been making some headway. And so what do? They got to come out and spin it. Oh, no. Remember Rodney King? Yeah, that's the reason. Rodney King made it different. Please. Shit.
Yeah, no, we always knew, we always talk about it, we always highlight the fact that it's the left that's the racist. All they care about is, race, gender politics, anything that is on their side. They are literally always want to be the ones that highlight this, highlight that. They do nothing but divide us. That's all they talk about is the divisions, the differences between you, between me, between everybody else. And it's the lefties that run into the chat rooms. I love it. I love when they step on me and they call me a Nazi. I'm like, you realize that that's like impossible, right? Like it's absolutely impossible, but more power to you. Please keep spreading your nonsense. Like, it's like, this is what they care about. They think that the identity politics is still a winning issue, even though they've been getting themselves crushed now for several years. We intend, our guys, the MAGA guys, we intend to take back our country all the way. We intend to get rid of these ridiculous hate speech laws. We intend to get rid of all of this. And that's what they fear. They understand that they had the brass ring right in front of them. And then they lost it all because they went way overboard and proved to the entire society that their ideal society is literally 1984. That's what they want. Where only the popular, what they think is what matters, that's what is right for everybody. And we'll enforce it with an iron fist if we need to. These people are communists, and they'll use any tactic to achieve communism.
Well, they're not even hiding what the motivation is. Like, that's the thing that I find amazing. And I guess that's the frustrating part for people when they look at GOP leadership right now. Because they'll come out and say, no, we need to oppose these justices from being nominated because when the Conservatives have a majority on the Supreme Court, they'll be able to shape the future of the country for the next 30 or 40 years. Yeah, that's right. And if the Democrats had have won, then they would be the ones shaping the future of the country for the next 30 or 40 years. Unfortunately, your feelings don't trump, pardon the pun, 60 plus million voters.
That's right.
So they won. You lost. Like, shut up. And it's not fair. You can't have too many conservatives you can't have a majority of conservatives on the Supreme Court. Why, they're going to rule in favor of conservatism. Maybe you should have been winning elections. Like, maybe it is bad luck. Maybe it's bad luck that the timing just worked out and you're now at this critical juncture and a bunch of these Democrat judges are retiring or dying, you know, in the case of some of them. And, you know, unfortunately, you just lost the election that you had to win because you put up such a terrible candidate that even Democrats wouldn't vote for her. They voted for Trump instead. And so you're going to lose the flip of the coin. That's okay. Come back in 3 or 4 decades. You'll have another crack. It'll be fine. Like, what are you afraid? Why are you afraid of change, progressives? That's what I want to know. Why are you? I thought we're supposed to embrace change, James. Isn't change a wonderful thing? Isn't democracy a wonderful thing? I do have a quick little video here from our mate Brian Stelter. James, if we can just play a couple of minutes of this.
Try to put yourself in Christine Blasey Ford's shoes for a minute. You lived with this trauma for years. You kept it a secret.
Okay, so an assumption of truth straight off the bat.
And back in July, you confided in a reporter about it, but you insisted on confidentiality. During the Senate confirmation hearings, you thought about going public, but you decided not to. You decided to keep your secret buried. But then your name started to leak out. Reporters started to knock on your door. You felt like your civic responsibility to speak out outweighed your anguish and terror about retaliation.
My anguish and terror about retaliation. Well, why did you speak to the reporter in the first place? Right? I guess, you know, the appeal was there to have an unnamed rape accusation floating around for a potential appointee to the Supreme Court. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, I didn't think anything would come of it. I'm just accusing the next potential justice of the Supreme Court of trying to rape me when I was a teenager. But I didn't think anybody would ever want to know more. Like, I thought I could just say that to the Washington Post and that would be the end of it.
To the Washington Post, I might add.
Yeah. Are they really good at keeping secrets?
Now,
like they don't leak anything at the Post.
You're Ford. You're living in a hotel. You're staring down death threats.
Yep.
You're thinking about testifying.
Staring down death threats.
President of
See, look at this. Like, put yourself in Christine Blasey Ford's shoes. Okay, that's fine. I get that. How about putting yourself in the shoes of the guy who's being accused of trying to rape a teenage girl while he's going for the dream job of judges? He's worked 4 decades to get to this point of his career, and it might be shot. Why don't you put yourself in his shoes? Like, Brian Stelter doesn't even entertain the idea that it might be wrong. That doesn't enter the conversation, James, because you have to just assume that she's right. Even if you're a witness at the party who says, I wasn't at the party and I don't even know the guy. No, you've got to assume that she's right too. Everybody must assume. Like I said, I'm over this garbage.
Republicans, I think, are so mad right now, so angry, that as just proof to screw with these people, to teach them a lesson, I bet you there's going to be 300, 400, 400 women that are going to make fake accusations against Brian Stelter just to show him how easy it would be to flip this script on him.
I don't think that would be believable.
No, I don't think it would be either.
I don't think it's going to hit him.
Yeah, but that's the point, is these guys are a bunch of morons, and this is why the women are always the smartest amongst us. Why? Because they never think with the little head, ever, right? They're the ones that literally are saying, you know what? I've got a son and a daughter. I want them to be equal on merit. You know what else we have? We have a bunch of minorities that are waking up to this, like myself and others, that can easily say, you know what? Dr. King said, judge a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin. What does that do? That explodes their identity politics. This is what's happening. The waking up of America. Think about this. Republicans got just as woke up through this election process as a lot of the independents. All the wool came off of everybody's eyes, and everybody's aware now that it's uniparty, that they're together, they're incestuous, they're in bed together, that this is all a sham, because the left is no better than the right, is no better than the left. They're doing this together jointly. We know it. And so that's why we're trying to take back this country. That's why we're going to win in November. We're not winning in November because the Republicans are pure as the driven snow. And that's the problem the left has and the mainstream media has, is they're fighting the wrong battle, which is brilliant for me. Yep. I love it. But they're fighting the wrong battle. They still think this is Democrat versus Republican. when it's not. This is literally patriot versus criminal. This is literally
they definitely want it to be. They want it to be Democrat versus Republican.
And
absolutely.
It's not. That's why independents are all over Twitter saying, I'm voting straight our ticket in November, because they know that that's the only chance America has. And guess what? When we win this election in November, we're not stopping. We're not going away. We're not going to be quiet. We're starting the next year, 2019, fighting already for 2020. Why? We're going to primary out all the rhinos. We're going to primary out all the left, and we're going to get back to constitutional MAGA conservatives. We want our country back, and we're not going to stop fighting till we get it. That's the problem. They will learn their lesson, but it's going to have to be beat into their head and literally exposed nonstop. It looks like we're out of time again, as usual. I run over the timer because I get into my rants. So
I thought if I just left it hanging out there, you'd pick it up.
We'll be right back with the hammering, maybe sometime. Aloha, welcome back. It is time for your favorite segment of ever.
Stop the hammering.
Well, James, in the great leftist tradition of group identity, I guess we can blame you for this one. This is Mazi Hirono. Not only is she in Hawaii, but she's also Asian. So I guess it's your fault, James. But she's on CNN with Jake Tapper talking about, is she Asian? I don't want to get that wrong. Oops. It's okay. I wasn't even there. I don't even remember. I don't even know who she is. I wasn't there. It's okay. Here she is speaking with Jakey Tapper Boy.
So it looks like the hearing will be this week. What specifically do you plan on asking Brett Kavanaugh?
There are a lot of issues around Brett that involving what was happening in high school, et cetera. But even before all of this happened,
this woman is so dumb.
Before all of it happened. Maybe he was 5 years old, James. Maybe there was an issue when he was 3. Before what happened at high school. No, but there's other issues.
He had credibility issues in his testimony.
Well, see, now she's letting the cat out of the bag straight away, isn't she? She's saying, oh, no, there's credibility issues there. See, straight away the misdirection comes. Yeah, sure, that 17-year-old business, that was an issue. But you know what? We just don't like the way the guy answers questions. We don't like how conservative he is.
3 days of testimony. He's very outcome-driven in terms of how he views cases before him. And so I had issues with his credibility and how he went about things way before this.
He's very outcome driven. Yes, well, he is a judge. I would think that's a pretty good quality for a judge to have, wouldn't you? I would have thought being outcome driven when you're sitting on the bench is not only a good quality to have, but it's also probably somewhat of a necessity. Like, could you imagine going through a long drawn out trial, James, and then going to the judge? He goes, I don't know. You can both be right, I guess. I don't want to make a decision. I don't want to draw conclusions.
But you're not going to talk to him about policy at this hearing. This hearing is about specifically the allegations.
I would be wanting to hear what kind of environment it was in high school.
So she wants high school war stories, James. So that'll be an interesting Senate committee hearing, won't it? We can just get all the people in who were in the same year in high school. Yes, well, I didn't really like Mrs. Johns. She was very rude to me. Oh, we had some killer parties on the weekend. Yeah, I used to dress up funny on Fridays. Oh, I kissed a girl behind the toilets once. This is the stuff that they want to concern themselves with when picking a justice of the Supreme Court.
I think it's very telling that Maisie basically just admitted that she doesn't remember the 80s.
Apparently there was a lot of drinking and partying going on. This is why we need an investigation. We need
Apparently there was a lot of drinking and partying going on. This is why we need an investigation. Let's unearth this school, James. We need to expose this school and their debauched behavior, which produced not only a next justice of the Supreme Court, but also sexual assault, James. We need the FBI to uncover this madness.
An independent investigation that lays all of that out for us so that there's at least some chance of some outside entity like the FBI doing an investigation. This is totally
now, she can't even hide it.
Break that sentence down. Break that sentence down. She said we need an independent investigation to get to the bottom of the kind of environment that was in the high school so we have a chance of having an independent investigation, James. Yep.
it's hilarious. Hold on one second, because that is hilarious. It was an excellent point, but I have to pay homage to our royalty that's in the house, Sin Soaked. I know I promised I wouldn't bring that up again, but I had to, because he just made a great comment in the chat room here. He said, they'll ask Kavanaugh if he got Ford pregnant at 15, would abortion be okay?
That would be a fantastic question. That would be a fantastic question. Was Roe v. Wade in effect back then?
Yes.
Was that already on the books?
Yes, it was. Okay. Yes, it
was. Because remember, during the Anita Hill days, there was an investigation, perfunctory as that was.
Perfunctory.
Dr. Ford is not even afforded that. Meanwhile,
there was an investigation even for Clarence Thomas, but Ms. Ford doesn't get the same respect. Well, if only she was black.
He's coming forward and very briefly saying, I will tell my story, so I'm going to do everything I can. She can tell her story.
This woman is so dumb.
Intimidation, fear, and kind of threats that she's already getting for even moving forward with
the Wall Street Journal.
Okay. She wants to tell her story, but she's worried about the intimidation and threats and fear, James. About what? Demanding an FBI investigation, demanding to sit in front of the Senate committee in order to make 36-year-old accusations against a guy who's being nominated for the Supreme Court. See, I don't even know how many of these threats and, how much of this is bullying is real. I saw on Twitter the other day, people were saying, no, if you make these accusations, you should front up and have to explain yourself. And those people were getting accused of bullying her. She said, she came out and said, I want to sit in front of the committee. And then she said, I don't want to sit in front of the committee, right? So then commentators came out and said, you should go and sit in front of the committee. You've made these accusations. Oh, stop bullying me. Stop bullying me. It's not fair. Can we just draw it out till past the midterms? Is that possible, please? Can we do that?
Editorial board wrote
then I'll do it.
The presumption of guilt, they say. They quoted you directly to
argue the
core tenet of American law is not being applied to Kavanaugh. They write, quote, the democratic standard for sexual assault allegations is they should be accepted as true merely for having been made. The accuser is assumed to be telling the truth because the accuser is a woman. The burden is on Mr. Kavanaugh to prove his innocence. This turns American justice and due process upside down.
Jake Tapper, ladies and gentlemen. I keep telling you, he's not the worst one at CNN. He actually gives them a little bit when he gets an opportunity.
Your response.
If the Wall Street Journal really cares about due process, I'd say that they should care that there is no independent investigation.
That's one of my favorite lefty tricks of all time. If you come out and say, well, due process is being turned on its head. And then, of course, the accusation is always along on, well, if you cared about due process, then you would be in favor of turning it on its head to just have an FBI investigation into 36-year-old claims about drunken boob touching at a high school party. We need to know about the environment in this high school before we elect this guy to the bench. Like, obviously, he was 17 at the time. Screw due process. To hell with juvenile stuff. No, it matters now. And if you were in favor of due process, you'd want to prosecute this 17-year-old, 35 years later for trying to touch a boob at a party, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you?
These allegations. I think that this kind of attitude is what makes it really difficult.
Attitude. This kind of attitude where people say, due process is important, this makes it difficult for us Democrats to get what we want.
Victims and survivors of these kinds of traumatic events to even come forward. We don't seem to have come very far from the Anita Hill days.
We haven't progressed enough. We haven't progressed enough.
As they said,
when is enough enough? Is it going to be when women dominate the whole world? When literally men are there to do nothing but breed when you choose, and then the rest of the time, what are we going to be, the slaves in the field? I mean, these people are destroying people with their thought process. It's incredible to watch this ignorant woman go on national television representing my state and actually think she has intelligent thoughts.
I think it'll end when there's a hammer and sickle flying proudly above the White House, James. Because of course it'll end then, because if you disagree, guess where you go? Straight to the gulags, my friend. Then we'll have utopia. Once we can eliminate people like bigots like you, James, then we'll live in harmony.
Out and talk to.
By the way, you know who else didn't like due process, don't you? Wink, wink.
Talk to me about due process, or all the women out there that I'm hearing about who never came forward. It is really important, not only for these.
You see, because of all of the other women that I've heard about out there who never came forward, there's no number. There's no number put forward. By the way, if you're interested in things like due process, I just thought I'd bring this up for you, James. Just a fun little tidbit from the known right-wing conspiracy website called Slate, James. Crying rape. False rape accusations exist, and they are a serious problem. Remember, this is Slate, known right-wing conspiracy website. In the emotionally charged conversation about rape, few topics are more fraught than that of false allegations. Consider some responses to the news that singer-songwriter Conor Oberst had been falsely accused of sexual assault. Last December, a woman writing in the comments section of the website XO Jane, going by the name of Joni Faircloth, claimed Oberst raped her when she was a teenager. The charge then spread across the internet. Oberst denied it and brought a libel suit against Faircloth when she refused to retract the story. In July, she completely recanted, admitting that she had made it all up to get attention. False rape accusations are a lightning rod for a variety of reasons. Rape is a repugnant crime, and one for which the evidence often relies on one person's word against another. Moreover, in the not-so-distant past, the belief that women routinely make up rape charges often led to appalling treatment of victims. However, in challenging what author and law professor Susan Estrich has called the myth of the lying woman, feminists have been creating their own counter-myth. That of the woman that never lies, James. Yes, because you have to believe it all straight away. To hell with evidence-based conclusion. Do you want to see what kind of society we're living in right now? Here's another one for you. You can measure Trump's racism by his hurricane-related tweets. We know hard evidence. Where are the fact checkers on this stuff? You know, they bring out a whole team of fact checkers when Donald Trump says, I build the best buildings in New York. Oh, that's a lie. That's a lie. He never won an award for that. You can't say it's the best building in New York. Well, where the hell are the fact checkers when some drongo comes out and says, oh, Trump's racism? Yep, I know because I've got it on the hurricane-related tweet matrix. Like I've put it into a spreadsheet. I've got it all figured out. These are the people that you're supposed to believe, ladies and gentlemen. When they tell you a story. Let's carry on. Let's carry on with your Marzi.
Survivors to be heard, but if their stories are credible, as Dr. Ford's story is, credible. They need to be believed.
So if their stories are credible, like Dr. Ford's story is, they need to be believed. Can you tell me some of the credible aspects of this story, James? Would it be the fact that it happened 36 years ago and she doesn't remember half of the details? Would it be the fact that most of the witnesses that she claims were there and can attest to her?
All.
You know?
All. Every one of the witnesses has said, didn't happen, wasn't there, no party. All of them. Yep. Not just some of them, not most of them, all of them.
Have you seen that picture going around of... it's alleged to be Miss Ford face down, topless, surrounded by beer bottles after a pool party. Have you seen that one?
I saw that. I have no idea if it's real, but I still
we
thought
don't
it was
know if it's real or
apropos.
not, of course. But there are, a number of stories coming out of the high school about the yearbook. She even said herself, everybody was drunk and partying all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody was drunk and partying all the time, James.
I love the 80s. I don't know about you, but I love the 80s.
Credible accusations, James. Because I say so.
4 people said to be at the party Ford described have denied knowledge of the incident. Brett Kavanaugh, obviously,
Not denying the incident, denying knowledge of the incident. Because if you say deny knowledge of the incident, then the incident still happened, right? I just didn't know about it, but it still happened, obviously. Very, very slight wording there from Jakey Boy.
Mark Judge, who she says was in the room, PJ Smith, and even Ford's longtime friend Leland Kaiser.
Former longtime friend, I think you'll find now.
But there are these statements from the 4 people she remembers being there who don't remember the incident or don't even remember being at the party in question, according to her friend, Leland Kaiser, who says she believes her, but doesn't have any memory of it.
Yes.
Doesn't Kavanaugh have the same presumption of innocence as anyone else in America?
I put his denial in the context of everything that I know about him in terms of how he approaches his cases.
Yes. Because he rules according to the Constitution, James, and according to the law, well, that proves he's an attempted rapist. Yes, you're Marzi of Hawaii, ladies and gentlemen.
As I said, his credibility is already very questionable.
His credibility.
My fellow Judiciary Committee members.
His credibility's in question. Damn that judge and his stick-to-itiveness when it comes to the Constitution and law and order. I mean, he comes up with all of these decisions that I don't like. Therefore, well, I've got to believe somebody who accuses him of trying to touch her boob when they were drunk and teenagers 36 years ago.
The Democrats. So
the Democrats?
He comes and, when I say that he's very outcome-driven, he has an ideological agenda.
He has an ideological agenda, James.
Wow!
I love it. Don't you just love the projection of the Democrats these days?
Jeez.
Oh, we can't have this guy on the Supreme Court. He's got an ideological agenda. I wish I had the clip brought up of Hillary Clinton during the debates talking about what kind of Supreme Court nominee she would have, and she was like, Donald Trump said, well, I would pick somebody who interprets the Constitution as it was written. She said, I would pick somebody who's in favor of trans rights. And even the guy conducting the debate was like, what? What the hell are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? No, but he's got an ideological agenda, James. Have we gone over time? I don't even know. I can't even see a clock.
Yeah. The clock's been off. We don't even care. We've busted it on every single segment. Let's just keep it rolling. The people demand it. Let me interrupt real quick before we get back to it and say we have most of our followers, I'm sure you're aware, are actually female. Believe it or not, it's actually females. And the room is being dominated by a lot of women, some of which are oversharing. I do have to say, Jennifer, I did not need to know that about you in a picnic table. However, I would say that I would die to have the 80s back, okay? We all remember the 80s that are old enough, and for those of you youngins that remember the 90s, just think about it as just a better version of the 90s. The 80s were where it was at, and I'm telling you, these people are absolutely insane with this commentary, trying to draw any conclusions back to the 80s and high school. It's incredible to watch the stupidity that comes out of this woman's mouth.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think it's real. And, you can call me a bad person for saying so. You know what? Stuff you. Don't care. I don't care. I've seen far too many dirty Democrat tricks and far too many, hoax accusations and stuff over the last few years to just fall in and not critically think. Especially when you consider the time, especially when you consider all of the so-called witnesses that said it didn't happen. When you consider all of that, what am I supposed to sit here and go, oh, no, I just believe it anyway because I'm a good feminist? Oh.
Very outcome-driven, and I can sit here and talk to you about some of the cases that exemplifies his, in my view, inability to be fair in the cases that come before him. This is a person.
Yeah, I love that. It's his inability to be fair, right? So he's very outcome-driven, James. I don't like the way he rules as a judge. Therefore, I'm going to assume that he's guilty of trying to rape somebody. And she's worried about his fairness. Oh, no, he's not fair. That's why I think he probably tried to rape someone when he was a teenager.
The left's idea of fair is they get their way. That's what fair means to a leftist. We're right.
Yep. I think it was actually I think it was Scott Adams who said something along the lines of fairness was invented to make idiots feel like they have something to add in arguments.
That is going to be sitting on our Supreme Court making decisions that will impact women's reproductive choice. He has a
it used to be abortion rights, then it was reproductive rights, now it's reproductive choice. Now it's choice, James. I'm pretty sure there's a choice period before the pants come off. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, think about the language that these guys are using. Like, it's so crystal clear they want to fight about abortion. So crystal clear. But they're having a harder time, in my opinion. I know this is going to go against the narrative here, Boog, but in my opinion, they're having a harder time because they're going after this sexual assault angle against Brett Kavanaugh. Whereas they're not being able to directly tie this into, what they would do with Amy Barrett, where they would absolutely go after reproductive rights.
No, reproductive choice, James.
Choice, sorry. I can't even get their language right.
Women are just popping up pregnant these days. Like, no sex. There's no penetration, nothing like that. They're just waking up one day and they're pregnant. Oh, do I get a choice or not? This is bullshit, mate.
He very much is against women's reproductive choice. And I can tell you two very important cases in which he applied the same standard but came to totally different results to make it much harder for women to get this kind of coverage. So there are so many.
It's constant. It's the manipulation is constant. So if you're opposed to taxpayers funding abortion against their will, James, you're in the eye of a Democrat, you're making it harder for women to exercise their reproductive choices, right? Like, the manipulation is sentence to sentence to sentence.
Indications of his own lack of credibility.
It sounds lack of credibility. Again, his lack of credibility. Why? Because he's anti-abortion. He's got no credibility. He's unfair. He must have tried to rape somebody in the 80s.
Because you don't believe him when he says, for instance, that he does not have an opinion on Roe v. Wade. You don't believe him about this allegation about what happened at this party in 1982. Is that fair?
Well, this is why it is so important that there be at least an investigation so that there's some effort and collaboration. We think that there was a lot of drinking going on. As far as his friend Mark Judge, not even testify, that is astounding to me.
But she doesn't want to testify! The girl doesn't want to testify! Marzi, you mean the guy who was put into the spotlight as being in the room, who then came out and said, I don't remember any of this. I don't think he was even there. That guy, he doesn't want to testify. Oh my God, what a shock. The woman making the accusation against the judge doesn't want to testify. Nobody wants to testify. This proves that it's all true. Because usually when people make these kinds of accusations, James, like none of them want to testify. None of them actually want justice. No, I just thought I'd let you know. I just thought I was telling the paper, and I thought it would all go away. I didn't want it to become a thing.
I didn't want it to be actual news, so I told a newspaper.
Exactly. She did tell the Washington Post, to be fair.
He was right there. In that
he was
room.
Right there.
He refuses to testify.
How was he
was right there in that room?
How was he right there? Exactly.
What happened to the investigation? I thought we needed it. We don't need an investigation. We just need Marzi Hirono. She's got it all figured out, baby. She can look back through like the time vortex. She's like, we need an investigation to find out what was going on. Wait a minute. Very next sentence. This guy, he was in the room when it happened. We just saved millions of dollars on an investigation we don't need.
I remember an incident.
That means there's a lot of drinking going on. This is the environment. And
what is it? She has said there's a lot of drinking going on at least a dozen times.
6
She
times.
keeps saying outcome driven. Like, is this like, was there like a buzzword like talking sheet that they had to program into Maisie's software this morning? That all she could talk about was drinking and outcome and drinking and outcome. What's the outcome when you drink? Rape. What? Wait a minute. Your mouth is completely off.
I wonder if she's saying, there was a lot of drinking in order to cover herself for when it becomes obvious that this didn't happen.
Right.
Like, hey, It's not fair to attack the person for making false allegations about attempted rape. There was a lot of drinking going on. That's why we needed an investigation. We were the good guys. We wanted an investigation to get to the bottom of it. We never assumed she was correct. Well, you did say you assume that she's correct because you don't like the judge's, various voting records when it comes to important key decisions. Yeah, but don't worry about that. I always wanted an investigation. I just assumed. I was assuming based on the fact that he has no credibility.
And meanwhile, Dr. Ford has come forward and said,
I think Kavanaugh's lying, though.
I believe her. Let's put it that way.
You think the friend is lying? Well, I believe her. Let's put it that way.
This woman is in the Senate.
Let's not accuse anybody of lying.
Please get rid of this woman from the Senate. Please. This woman she like literally can't even think her thoughts out loud on CNN, where they help you. They give you leading questions and you still can't get shit right. She still can't figure out that you can't make a judgment before an investigation and then demand a fair investigation when you're not even willing to listen to the investigation.
It doesn't matter, James. She doesn't need an investigation. We already established that. She knows who was in the room, who saw what. There was plenty of drinking going on. The judge has no credibility, and that's why we need an investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, there's your hammering.
These people are driving me nuts. Oh, Lord.
Stop the hammering.
James, do you want to do one more since we've gone absolutely way overboard and make up for the tech issues?
I'll tell you what, we'll be right back right after this.
Okay.
If I can get the dang button. I can't even push the buttons right tonight. My Lord, this is just... Aloha and welcome back to Double, Triple, Quadruple Overtime, a whole new segment we just made up on the fly. That's our thing. We just had so many issues tonight. So many issues tonight between the tech stuff and then the brain stuff. We haven't made a single time yet. We're way overboard. So I figured, you know what, we'll just end that segment. So I had a segment in the can, and now we can do whatever you want.
Okay, cool. I did really want to get your thoughts on this, and I thought this would be a great way to close it off for tonight. Everything you need to know about the midterms. Yes, from that coming from that known right-wing conspiracy website known as The Guardian. The key question in these elections is, will Republicans be able to keep control of both chambers of Congress? Just 35 of the 100 seats in the Senate and all of the 435 seats in the lower House of Representatives are up for grabs. To take control of the legislative agenda and block Trump's ability to implement his programs, the Democratic Party needs to control both houses. With a Senate majority, the Democrats would be able to block cabinet and Supreme Court appointments. Ding, 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 ding. But while they may be able to take the House, clinching the Senate will be much harder. Impeachment, by the way, requires a 2/3 majority in the Senate, so would require Republican votes even if the Democrats won every available seat in November. We've been saying it for 18 months. Impeachment is not going to happen. Not going to happen. Here comes the math. The grand old party does have a big advantage over the Democrats in this showdown because the Democratic Party is defending 26 seats, including 2 independents who usually vote with them, while the Republicans only have to defend 9. Now, this is the bit that I love. The Senate electoral system, James, are you ready for this? If you're sitting, lie down. If you're driving, please pull over. The Senate electoral system is also weighed against the Democrats. Yes. Damn that electoral college. Ah, yes. You know, like getting all of those votes. Like, listen to this. Each state gets 2 senators irrespective of the population. So Wyoming has as many as California. Why does Wyoming even have senators? All of the senators should be in California and New York, I think. Despite the latter having more than 60 times the population. Do you know what I think is quote unquote weighed against the Republicans, James? The fact that the Electoral College votes in the election, the number of those allocated actually goes off the census, and illegal immigrants are counted in the census. Yep. Why are illegal immigrants counted in the census? They don't vote, allegedly. Yep. If
they're not allowed to vote.
Conspiracy
that's for sure.
websites have led me astray. Why are they counted in the census? Because then California gets more Electoral College votes, right?
They're counted in the census because lefties make the rules and lefties count the count. I mean, it's pretty simple. Most Republicans have a job and aren't going to be walking around knocking on people's doors asking how many people live here. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So, look, it's time for Constitutional Republic 101, James, to spout off again about repeal the 17th Amendment. Repeal the 17th Amendment. Worst thing that ever happened to our country. And it's part of why the Democrats tried to steal the name and why they continue to always say the same stupid crap. We live in a democracy. No, you don't. You live in a constitutional republic. And this is the problem, is everybody gets raised up in the school system that literally teaches them false narratives of we live in a democracy. And we don't. The reason we don't is because when we were making the law, when we were making this country, when we were figuring things out, it literally comes down to this, and I'll try to keep this as quick and simple as possible. The first thing that happened when we won our freedom
be long, boring, and complicated. Give the fans what they want.
The first thing that happened was we won our freedom. The second thing happened was, oh crap, now we need a leader. The third thing that happened was they said, hey George, you want to be king? George said no. Thank God he said no. Then a bunch of people from a whole bunch of different places, namely we call those the 13 colonies, that said, you know what? Well, if we're not going to have this king, we need to break things up. And so what did they say? They said, you know what? The men that fought and died for this country should make the law. So they created Congress, and Congress wrote the law. Those are the guys that are going to make it. They said, well, if the king can just change the law whenever he wants, well, that's not going to do us any good. So what did they say? They said, well, we don't like your law in Massachusetts. We like the laws over here in Virginia. So how did they get around this? They created the Senate. And this is why each state has 2 senators, so that the states' rights were represented in the body of Congress, so that they couldn't write laws that said, hey, Massachusetts, screw you, we're doing things the way Virginia wants it. This is literally why we have it. And this is why we need to get back to getting rid of, repealing the 17th Amendment, because the citizenry was never supposed to vote for the senators. That's why you've lost all your states' rights, because there's nobody in the country protecting your state's rights. They're literally, all they do is suck up money out of K Street and pervert the whole system. If you had the Senate being represented from where it used to be, appointed by the state legislature, at least they would have to be corrupted from within inside the state. You know how hard it is to bribe a state legislature to appoint a specific senator? Much, much harder than it is to bribe one senator in Washington. This is why this is important.
Hashtag no one cares about Wyoming. I think that's what I got out of that. The key races being highlighted here, James. Arizona. The Senate seat held by Barry Goldwater and John McCain could be picked up by the Democrats in 2018. After a tough primary, Republican Martha McSally has been pushed to the right, James, and faces a tough race against Democrat Kyrsten Sinema in a state with a growing Latino population, because, of course, they would only ever vote Democrat until the end of time, and with deep tensions between traditional business-orientated Republicans like McCain and, get this, the hard right Trumpists, James. The fascists. The fascista. Yes, Martha McSally, she's goose-stepping at a polling booth near you come the election. The Democrats have a much better chance of winning here. Representation in the House is relative. This is in the House. Could they win control of the House? Representation in the House is relatively proportional to population, and the whole chamber is re-elected every 2 years. They need a net gain of 24 seats to win a majority. That still seems like a lot, doesn't it? Like, what's the biggest swing? Do you know offhand roughly what the biggest swing was in one cycle?
For Congress?
In one midterm?
What are we talking? Congress? Well, it's actually been pretty large. There's every 2 years in this country, 435 seats are up for re-election. It's a lot.
Sure.
So we've had swings that were pretty dang large. I don't know exactly the answer to that question, but I know for a fact it's happened at over a pace of 60 before. But it's rare. It's rare. It literally comes down to why we have been winning so many state elections and state legislatures as it is, why we control more governorships, is because the states themselves tend to be actually pretty Republican, pretty conservative on the overall, and they have been going back that way. And, but there are districting. That's why they do this thing which we call gerrymandering, where basically whatever party is in charge gets to rewrite the congressional districts. They get to draw the lines, right. And, they try to basically make the lines all go in a way to where Republicans win everything or Democrats win everything. So that's where it gets complicated.
Target different counties and stuff. Look at demographics in different counties. They do that same sort of stuff here. It's an art form, trust me. An absolute art form.
My entire neighborhood didn't move, but I got redistricted.
Right, yeah. The same thing happened to me. I was once in a marginal conservative seat, so it was mostly conservative, but would flip back to the left from time to time, and we got redistricted into a seat that the left has never lost. And we're outvoted 5-1. So there you go. It happens. Here you go, James. In the last 50 years, they need a net gain of 24 seats to win a majority. But in the last 50 years, they've scored a net gain of that size only twice. So that was in 1974 and in 2006. In the same period, the Republicans have made a 24 net gain only 3 times, but the most recent was in 2010 in the midterm elections of Barack Obama's first term. You can see on the graph here, in 94, the Republicans made a gain of 52 seats, and in 2006, the Democrats made a gain of 31. So, yeah, it is possible. Yeah. American voters are usually reluctant to eject a sitting representative. That's the same across the Western world. Some of their best hopes are in the seats where the incumbent is not standing again. Now, that brings up a little twist, doesn't it? Because if you're more likely to vote for an incumbent than you are when it's an open race, then that puts potentially a little bit of a tinge on these numbers of Republicans who have decided to step down. Take their pension and get out of the game, so to speak, because maybe they're making it easier for the Democrats to win that seat by not being there. Have we considered that? Definitely something to think about. Yeah. The good news for the Dems is that a record of 39 Republicans, many of whom were anti-Trump, have chosen to bow out instead of contest their seats in November, and some of those are in key swing states such as Florida and Pennsylvania. James.
See, I'm gonna say that this is the point where I say I freaking love it, because all of our friends and family, the girls at the Your Voice America campaign corner, not only have they picked 80% winners, but in those districts, they can tell you that we gained, us, the MAGA people, we gained a ton of MAGA candidates in those districts. Not only did we gain that, but we gained in huge numbers on voter turnout in the primaries. We have a lead. I don't know of a in fact, I could be wrong because I'm not in the campaign corner, but if I remember what my sisters told me correctly, we actually had a majority lead of voter turnout in every single district. We didn't lose in any district other than districts already basically controlled and dominated by the left, which is California, some in New York, those kinds of districts. But even in those districts,
turnout for the Democrats was near record lows.
Right.
Voter engagement is through the floor.
Yep. Yeah, we have a voter turnout advantage in every single district that's contested. So I have a lot of hope going into November. I mean, we still got to do our jobs. I am the person that tries to encourage everybody to not only go yourself to the polls, but, kidnap 5 people and take them with you.
Yeah, fair enough. Key race in Florida, James. This will close us out. African-American Democrat Andrew Gillum won an upset victory in the primary. Yes, it's so rare these days for African-Americans to be elected. Barack Obama. We have to make a special note of it. Bolstered by heavy financial support from Tom Steyer, a billionaire hedge fund manager. I thought we hated big banks on the left. I thought we were against big money in politics, right? Remember that? Like, isn't this guy like one of the Bernie Sanders? Isn't this guy one of the Bernie Sanders set on the hard left?
Right.
We've got to get the money out of politics. In walks a billionaire hedge fund manager. We got to get the money back into politics. we can't let the Nazis win.
Oh, we destroyed
give me
them.
that cash. Give me more money.
This election cycle, we destroyed them. We were outspent 2-1, and we won. And we proved that money is not the main motivating factor that wins elections. And then we also proved that all of the big money went on the left side. Like, so that we've also destroyed the narrative that all these big bad business corporations are owned by Republicans. No, you guys are all on the rolls, literally with your name and signature and money, financing the left. So your whole meme is destroyed.
Of course they are, because they benefit most greatly from globalization and, you know, edicts pushed down from UN level and trade bodies where, you know, it's a well-known fact. Under Barack Obama, the top 3%, the gap between the top 3% and the bottom 97% grew more than any other president in history. To make the claim that the left is somehow anti-corporation is just plainly false and stupid. Like, I don't even bother arguing with it anymore. I just roll my eyes and go, okay, yeah, thank you. The unabashed progressive will face off against Republican Ron DeSantis, an ardent Trump supporter, in what will be one of the marquee races of the midterms. Is DeSantis going to lose that race, do you think?
Absolutely no way. Not a chance in hell.
Oh.
No, I'm predicting it here right now. I know, shocker. I'm going to predict everything and roll with this. There is not a chance in hell Ron DeSantis is going to lose in Florida. Not a way. No way.
Oh, well, that's a shame. I guess the billionaire hedge fund managers are just racist after all. They need more money. More money for the hard left who want to get the big money out of politics. Isn't it wonderful?
Absolutely. Guys,
what a show.
We went double, triple, quadruple overtime, blew up our computers for you. It's time for us to go eat and actually put something in the can for all the rest of the profits that we don't make. We love you guys. We will be back next week, I promise, even if our computers are on fire. Any final words, Boog?
Peace. I need a new computer.
We'll see you guys. Aloha.